when something can't happen and it seems like everyone in the world around you is experiencing that thing, that checkbox, it makes us feel really unfulfilled when we can't do that thing. But I'm here to say that it can be an incredibly fulfilling life if your train doesn't stop at that station, even if it's intentional, because life's not about those things. That's been my experience anyway.
Hey friend, welcome to Sam and Em Solve the World's Problems.
We still have a lot of problems.
Who'd have thought?
Not me.
Not me. Today we have a very special guest joining to talk about leadership and what qualities are important to create an effective leader.
Yeah, we're also going to be talking about what to do when your life falls apart and how to make life-changing decisions.
They're the perfect guest for these problems because this guest is the Mission Centre President for the Community of Christ in Australia.
Yeah, and also one of the wisest people we know. Please welcome Ben Smith. Hi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
This is Ben Smith, everybody. He is our Australian Mission Centre President for our church. Yeah.
I guess we want to get kicked off with knowing a little bit about you, Benno. How did you, well, first of all,
what is a Mission Centre President?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. Some days I ask myself that question. But basically, the church has a couple of different layers to it. One is that generally people would recognise the church as being a local one. So your group around you is your congregation. That's kind of one layer. And then congregations, when they're all put together, we have multiple congregations in a certain area. And so in Australia, we're grouped all together under what's called the Australia Mission Centre. And that has 19 congregations. And so that's the layer. And then those mission centres are then grouped together in what's called the World Church. So I guess I'm responsible for the Australian Mission Centre, which is made up of the 19 congregations in Australia and our staff. And we have a charity called Saints Care as well, which I am the leader of as well. So yeah, it's essentially to be responsible for making sure we are following all of the rules.
Do you know why it's called, I just think it's weird terminology. Do you know why it's called a mission?
That's a good question. It was called a region once upon a time. But
that's easier to understand for me.
It sounds very Mormon-y.
I think before it was a region, it was a mission, right back in the start, like in the 1800s.
Okay.
So yeah, it was like what we might reference in other countries where people go on a mission trip to a mission in somewhere. Like back in the early days of Australia, even, there was some pretty bad history, but associated with missions. But that was essentially what it was. It was a church plant or place in a certain area. So I guess that's probably where it comes from.
Yeah. Okay. Mission Centre President then.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is a very strange term.
Yeah, but I think the main one is president. You're the leader, really, of the church in Australia.
Yeah.
And so, this episode, we want to talk a lot about leadership and how that affects us and I guess why it's important. And I guess that is a good first question. What do you think are the more important qualities of leadership or being a leader, especially in today's day and age and from your perspective as Mission Centre President?
Yeah, I guess there's so many different ways to look at this question. And really for me, it comes down to navigating whatever the landscape is that you're in and whatever organisation or group of people that you're a leader for or with. It is essentially getting the best out of people and helping them achieve whatever the greater goal is for whatever you're trying to do. So whether it's a leader of an organisation or a country or a football club or whatever the scenario is, leadership from my perspective is about harnessing people's capacity and enabling them to become the best versions of themselves. And so in my context, where I'm a leader of this organisation, I guess there's so many different ways to look at leadership. And some people might see it as a way of saying, look, we just need leadership right now. And what they're really saying is, tell us what to do. And then in my experience, when you do that, it's stop telling us what to do.
A lot of eggshell walking.
Yeah. So I guess there's this real fine balance, and it depends a lot on personality and a lot on the organisation and what you're trying to achieve. But I guess, for me and my personality and the way I approach life and business and, people, it's about saying, how do we together want to get to where we want to go? And I've got some ideas about that myself, about the organization, but really it's about saying, okay, Sam, and what do you guys really think about this? And how can we help together bring us all forward? Because it's a little slower, but in some ways it's a lot quicker because you're doing it together. And so, yeah, for me, leadership is about helping people understand how they can move forward together. That's, if I was to bring it down in a nutshell.
I like that.
Yeah. I think that's a really great segue into our next question, which is also half of an apology.
Oh.
So you gave us both a copy of this book called How to Lead When You Don't Know Where You're Going. And neither of us have read it.
I want to make disclaimer. I tried so hard this week. I was like, no, but
started reading it this week, but I was in a very anxious headspace and just couldn't concentrate on the words.
I started reading it ages ago, and when I was trying to get back into reading.
Yeah.
Some of the sentences were a bit too complex for my tiny little brain to absorb, and I went, nah, I'm annoyed, and I put it down.
Yeah.
And then we decided we would love to have you on the podcast. We invited you on. I was like, oh, I should really read that book that he has gifted to me.
Yeah.
And I tried again, and I was like, man, I can't read it.
I'm getting there. I'm making my way through it. I just haven't yet. But the question itself is like a beautifully worded, how do you lead when you don't know where you're going? Because most of the time you wouldn't know where you're going. Big corporations like the church, stuff like that. Like what do you think about that?
And that's the name of the book.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you lead when you don't?
It is a great resource. But yes, how to lead where you don't know where you're going is a question that not many leaders like to admit. They don't like to admit that they ask that question because it poses this feeling of inadequacy for a leader, because really you're employed or elected or whatever to lead an organization or a group. Hypothetically, you're employed to lead. So you're employed because you should know where you're going and you should know what you're doing. And the reality is, what I've discovered with leadership is often it's okay just to say, you know what, this sucks right now. Like, who knew that there was going to be this global pandemic and even pre-COVID time, the church is asking ourselves and the community, what does this world even look like anymore? We have no idea what technology has done to us. There's the change in society has happened so rapidly that we haven't had time to just sit and reflect. The philosophers of the world haven't had time to, smoke enough joints yet to work this out. And so to answer the question, how do you lead when you don't know where you're going? You stop and you listen. And for me, that's a really challenging thing to do when everyone is frantic and anxious about the future. And when all we want to do is fix the problem, when the first step to fixing the problem is to stop and listen and just to breathe for a second, that's not the answer people want. And yet it is the one that's most required, I think. And
reminds me of telling everyone to just calm down, and that doesn't ever work.
I saw that meme the other day. In the history of calming down, no one has ever calmed down after being told to calm down.
Yeah. No, but I like what you said as well about admitting when you don't know. That's a really hard thing. For me, for example, I've felt that a lot in my job, in my role, because I was hired without a lot of experience, and they kind of hired me a lot based on my attitude and things like that, and because they saw something in me. And so I very often don't know the answer to a lot of things. And you would think maybe that would be like empowering to admit that, but often you're sitting at a table, and when you feel like you're supposed to be employed to know what you're talking about, to admit all the time that you have no idea what you're talking about can be really difficult. And I don't know if there's any advice that you can give to people that, because I think as well that's a really admirable quality of someone to be able to say, hey, I have no idea what you're talking about here. How do I
Yeah. And I guess that comes back to understanding what our strengths are. And, when I think this generation, like yours and mine, have been gifted this wonderful opportunity to know where to look for things. Like we have been given Google, right? And it used to be the Encyclopedia Britannica before that. And for a short while, it was Encarta. I don't know if this is maybe my time. Encarta 95 was like the CD of Encyclopedia, and it was incredible. And yet now we have it at our fingertips. The answer is there, right? And so we've been gifted and taught to ask the right question. And so sometimes, because we don't need to store the information in our heads or anything, because at the touch of a button or the request to Siri, we can have the answer to just about any question that we want to ask, aside from existential ones. And so, I guess we should become more comfortable in a group setting, in a workplace or a school, to say, I'm not quite sure of the answer to that one, but hey, let me find that out for you. And for me, or reflecting the question back. So often somebody would say to me, particularly in my setting, how do we grow the church? Or, how do we involve more people in this particular thing? I don't have all the answers to these questions, and if at all. But I would usually say to someone, well, what do you think? How do you think that we could do that? Or what have you seen happen in other places? Or what have you learned in your experience? And reflecting the question back to people is a form of leadership in and of itself, because what you're doing is including everyone in the solution, not just looking like some kingpin who knows all of the answers. The ability to say, you know what, I'm not quite sure, but let me find out, is, I think, stronger than making up something and getting it wrong. It shows poise, and in terms of leadership in careers and just trust within people, it shows the ability to know where your limits are, and then be able to, I guess, come back with the appropriate answer. As an employer, I love it when staff do that, when they say, you know what, I'm not quite sure, but hey, what about this or what about this? Let me find out. I'll come back to you tomorrow, because it shows that A, the quality is going to be a whole lot better, but B, they're improving themselves as well, and which is therefore improving the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
I like that. That's definitely something I was taught at my job in customer service, was to always just be like, I don't know, but I'll find out for you. So I think that's a very
and you
universal.
can say that in a way that doesn't make you look like an idiot too.
Yeah,
but
you're going out of your way to find out. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I want to come back quickly to what you said when you were talking about how to lead when you don't know where you're going. The part of the book that I have read touched on the liminality aspect of that, and like what you were saying about just sort of sitting in that. You just have to stop and listen. And I just kind of wanted to get your perspective on, I don't know, I feel like right now, yes, we need to stop and listen, because like, what else are we going to do? This is changing our entire world, but it just feels so passive, and like I'm not doing anything, to just be sort of waiting in this liminality space right now of COVID and like everything changing. What do you think? Like, do you think that we just have to stop, or that we can sort of keep pushing?
Yeah, look, I guess liminality and stopping doesn't mean you're doing nothing. It's an intentional practice. It's not just the absence of things. It's like the idea of peace being the absence of war. Well, peace is so much more than the absence of war. And so liminality and stopping and reflecting is so much more than the absence of busy. It's really setting aside the time to work on you and work on your principles and work on the ideas that you have in the world and what's important to you. And coming from that place, when we leave this COVID time, will be really important because you'll have this foundation of understanding of what's right and what's true and what is love and what is compassion compassion and those kinds of things. When we rush through life and when we have just task after task or event after event or job after job, we get caught up in this whirlwind of busyness. And when we read the stories of effective leaders or effective influencers over the decades and centuries, for me, one of the things that stands out is this ability to react to a moment with clarity and with succinctness. And you can't do that out of a place of turmoil or busyness. You've got to do that from a place of strong foundation. And for me, this experience that we're going through is really difficult because it's something that my generation and your generation have never experienced before. We've never been told no, that we can't do something. We've been grown up being told you can do anything you want in the world.
Yeah, I love the Disney Channel.
Except buy a house.
Except afford to do things.
Yeah.
But what we're experiencing right now is this layer of restriction on our life, and it's really uncomfortable. And let me tell you, it's a challenge.
For the listeners, by the way, Ben is in Melbourne, stuck in the how long? 3 month period of lockdown.
6 weeks.
6 weeks, but it was doubled, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. So we had an original 6 weeks, which we were halfway through. So we're 3 weeks of stage 3 lockdown, which was basically you can only go to your house for 4 reasons, like health and food and work and whatever. And now so halfway through that, after 3 weeks, they're like, this isn't working. Let's go to stage 4, which is basically you're staying at home.
Yeah, there's a curfew. Yeah.
So
that's where he is.
Yeah, it's not enjoyable, especially when you have a active 18-month-old daughter running around the house and wanting to jump off the back deck.
You or Pippa?
Good question.
Is it hard? Is it harder knowing as well that every state bordering you is just chilling?
You've got no idea. Yeah. We were talking to some mates the other night who live in Perth, and we were just Zooming them on a Saturday night. We've been literally inside all day, and they've been out to lunch, and they've been on a long walk down the beach, and they've just been back from Margaret River, and I'm like, come on, guys, just fake it at least.
Look a little bit sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the liminal space is intentional, and I guess it's all about discerning our way through life. And I think one of the things that I've learned in the last sort of few years, in particular, is that there's no finish line. That this life isn't a race. That we've been, I guess, maybe grown up that way. That it is this race, and there's this, we want to climb the ladder, or we want to achieve all these things. And in my experience, that's not true. There is no finish line, and there is no race. We're here to experience life to its fullest. And so, why are we in such a rush to get anywhere? We don't need to tick all these boxes of, buy a house, get married, do all of these things.
I think part of it comes down, I feel this way at the moment, and I'm trying to rationalize it and have that headspace, watching other people around me, move on through their life stages and feeling stuck in a certain place. I think it's almost inherently human to want to be like other people you've grown up around too. I don't even know if it's a cultural thing that we have to get ahead. I feel like it's just I want to fit in. And you feel like you're getting left behind.
Yeah, there's a sense of satisfaction to that too, of achievement, and there's nothing wrong with any of that either. But for me, the expectation shouldn't be that by 25 you've got this, by 30 you've got this, by 45 you've got this. In my life, my wife and I experienced about a decade of where we were trying to have a baby and we couldn't, and so we went through many of these questions of, what is life about? Why can't we have that thing because we've missed the checkbox? We were supposed to have this done by now, and yet here we are in our 30s and, childless. We have a house, but, what good is it if we don't have that thing that people like us should have? And so we did a lot of exploration and sat in that liminal space about saying, what is life about? And it really was really impressed upon us that, life isn't about checking boxes. It's about loving each other and being in community and just, I guess, engaging in the fullness of the joys and the sorrows of life, because that's also the experience that we desire and we need to be more fulfilled, I think.
Mm. Yeah. I really like that. That really touches well on our second problem, but I want to come back to that because we do have a listener question for you.
Oh, okay, good.
So the question is, okay, in terms of like when you have like limits of compassion, how far you'll go to be compassionate, when do you sort of have to call it? When you're the leader of an organization, where is that line between, yes, I'm being compassionate and it's just too much?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess there's this time where we have to strive for something. And so, as a leader of a church, our model is Jesus, right? And so the model says at all times, compassion and love matter more than anything else. The idea that Jesus says the greatest commandment is to love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And so, for me, that means above and beyond anything, compassion and love and forgiveness they matter more than anything. And so there is no limit to that. And so to apply that into our own lives is a real challenge, though. And so it requires strength and courage. Courage is probably the right word, to be compassionate when your ego and when your community tells you not to be. An example I can give you is that, there's all sorts of challenges when you're leading a company, and one of them is disputes with commercial nature type of things. And when you're in those kind of disputes, it is really challenging to love that person or to be compassionate towards that person when they're maybe trying to rip you off or when they're trying to do something unjust or something like that. And yet, in my experience, when you take that layer off, which is sometimes I find impossible, to look at the person across from me who I know is trying to screw me over for money or for whatever, some sort of benefit for themselves. Maybe I know they're lying completely. And yet when I find out that person is going in for brain surgery next week, I need to pray for them. And I need to wish them well. And I need to actually believe and hope that person heals and has a sense of peace about them. And so I guess there's this human nature for us that says, oh, I really just hate you right now. And yet on the other side, we know that that's not going to get us anywhere.
Yeah.
That level of hate or distrust or grudge or whatever is such a negative, sapping energy that we put probably double the amount of energy into holding grudges than we do actually loving people. And so, and yet it destroys our soul, I think, to do that. So compassion, there should not be a limit to our compassion. Yeah.
How does that work then? Like, if you're arguing with someone, let's just make it a surface level, like political conversation. If you're talking to someone who just won't listen to you, just won't even participate in the conversation because they're just so in their head about what they care about, like their political idea is so overwhelming for them, they can't even listen to you. How then can you be compassionate in that moment? Like, what does that look like? Or do you just have to be like, I'm not wasting my time with this conversation anymore?
Yeah, I have this a lot.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about some of that as well.
I'm a fairly passionate individual when it comes to, human rights and equity and those kinds of things. And yet I know that also involves the person I'm arguing with. And so I think something that I've used in the past and in the recent past, you talk to any of my family or friends and they'll tell you that I've only recently become a convert to these kinds of ideas, and that is to put yourself aside and your idea and actually listen to them. And even though you might absolutely disagree with every premise that they're offering you, to say to them in that moment, in that heated debate, I can see where you're coming from, and just leave it at that. And not actually try to make a rebuttal, and not actually try to force your understanding onto them, because you know that's not going to happen. Like
that. I'm just reminded of literally like yesterday I was arguing with Will about something stupid. We were arguing about whether rain is an inanimate object or not. Basically, I was wrong, and I just said, I said to him, we Googled it, found out that I was wrong. I think it is I can't remember the definition, but I was wrong, and I remember saying, yeah, okay, you're right, and he like just kept going like, but Emily, I'm right. I'm like, yes, I know. I said that. Like, and it also reminds me of when you're singing happy birthday and say hip hip hooray, but you leave it on the second one and you don't keep going. Like, it's just that I just want to, but I just want to argue with you more. I just want to say hip hip hooray the third time. Like, I like doing that to people as much as like also, you should actually listen to them and like understand. It's fun to just be like, no, I know, I get it. Yeah, I see your side. I'm listening to you.
Yeah. Well, because you're not going to change anybody by yelling at them.
Yeah.
You know, and so the first step to forming any sort of resolution or reconciliation is just not arguing, is really to truly actively listen to them and say, tell me more about why you think that. And take it down a peg in volume and tone and body language to just say, really, why are you angry about this? Why are you so committed to the idea that the earth is flat or whatever the thing is? Taking that layer off, the anger, the frustration, the ego, taking that out of the picture really does help with those kinds of arguments.
Something I heard that really helped me with that was it's impossible to change someone else's opinion. Like you can only give out information and whatever story that you can tell. They at the end of the day they have to change their own mind.
Yeah.
So there's no point in, I guess, trying to force someone to change their mind. It doesn't make any sense. Like, and the way that I understood that was, someone can't change my mind. I know that. Yeah. I know someone cannot change my mind. It is impossible for someone to tell me something and like, no, I then have to think on that information, process it myself, and then come to a conclusion based on the evidence I've been presented. Once, I don't know, I think it was just the way it was phrased that it was presented to me like that. I went, oh yeah, you can't change someone's mind.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of what Annie said. Hopefully this was actually in the episode that we released. But what Annie said about like, once you start listening to people, you'll find that no one is listening to you. Like when you're having that conversation, and when you slow down and you listen to them and you take away the anger, you'll be able to see whether or not they're actually listening to you as well. Like,
yeah, that's really wise.
Yeah, I hope that bit made it into the episode. Otherwise, there's a little bit of yours. Extra. Yeah, that was all me, guys.
Yeah.
Oh my God, shut up. Am I right?
Oh my God, I know. Those two never stop talking.
Far out. Anyway, today's episode is brought to you by us.
Yay. If you like the podcast and you want to support us, the best ways to do that are to find us on the different podcasting platforms, subscribe, and leave us very nice reviews. 5 stars would be great. But also to screenshot where you're listening to us. So take a screenshot of the actual podcast when you're listening and upload that to your Instagram story and tag us. That gets word of mouth across and you get to share it with all your friends. So it's really helpful for us.
Okay, yeah, we're getting the wrap-up signal. We're going to have to wrap it up. We'll go back to the super amazing content brought to you by Sam and M. Have problems. Wait, no, not have problems. Damn it. Should have left it to the pros.
I think we should move on to the second problem that we've got. So this is, I don't even know how to phrase this problem. It's about like, what do you do when life falls apart, basically? So the first question is a listener question. And they would like to know, like, how do you go about making huge, life-changing, life-altering decisions?
What to do when that happens?
Yeah, like how do you actually, when you've got 2 different options and either one of them will change your life, how do you decide?
Oh, okay. I think Mim touched on this quite a few times too, didn't she?
Yeah.
And that's it is really a case by case thing for me. I guess I can speak from personal experience in a number of ways. I've had many different jobs in my life, and when I guess a tiny backstory. When I was in high school, I sucked at school and I sucked at most things in life. I had somewhat of a base level of smarts. You know, I knew how to get stuff done and I knew how to pass things, and that was all that really mattered because I was interested in other things. And so when I got to year 11 and 12, I hated study and still do. I can't stand it. And so I was like, you know what? I'd much rather be out there doing something stupid, like, I don't know, breaking laws or doing something dumb, than studying, right? And so that's what I did. And yet when it came to year 11 and 12, you know, my family's like, you know, let's go to what university, or my school's like, you know, what are you going to do? I'm like, you know, I don't have a clue, so I'm not going to waste 4 years of my life at that point in time. And so as soon as school finished, I was off to work, right? So I worked at Priceline Pharmacy. In fact, It wasn't pharmacy back then. It was just Priceline, because you paid less at Priceline. And and like I was on the cash registers, I was checking out, I was doing stuff on the shelves, you know, and I loved it because I was out earning money. All my mates were at uni or at, you know, when they all went to school, I'm like, hey, you know, rubbing my hands together because I had all these extra shifts. I'm like, yes, bring in the cash. And yet for, you know, a few years, I kind of jumped around different jobs. I was, you know, working in call centers and stuff like that when I was about 18, and sort of learnt a lot of skills in those environments because it's pretty intense. And so, you know, but within 3 weeks, you're a skills coach, and within like 6 months, you're some sales manager in a department somewhere, because that's the level of attrition, and they just need you because you kind of, you're a familiar face. And yet I learned a lot in that environment about succession planning for myself. And so I'd position, you know, to try to succeed and whatnot. And so after a period of quite a few years, I kind of jumped around and did all those things. And I was earning great money and having a great time in life. I had plenty of things, and yet I thought I was quite fulfilled in that process. And then, but there was this kind of nag about me saying, what do you actually, you know, what's the thing in your life that you want to try to achieve and actually long-term do something with? Because I'd only really ever had jobs for 6 months or 12 months. I think the longest in that period of time was maybe 2 years that I was in the same place, but I had different jobs in that place. And the opportunity came up to come and work for the church. And I knew that I kind of had wanted to do that in the past, and I had this real sense of call to do that. And it was just after I got married that we moved to Perth, and that's when I started working for the congregation out there. And the process that I went through I'm getting to the question.
That's fine. I trust you. I've listened to enough sermons to know that there's a point coming.
Thank you. The process that I went through to discover that was a good decision, even though it was completely life-changing, as in like 2 months after we got married, we picked up everything and moved to Perth. And while I grew up in Perth, my wife Lana had never even been to Perth, and yet we went there. And so we said to ourselves, what are we doing? How much time do we want to spend just discovering ourselves and discovering life? And we said, you know what, let's just do it. What's holding us back? You know, we're going to miss some family, right? But there are planes and there are cars, and luckily we didn't have a pandemic to deal with at that time. Yep. It would be bloody hard now. Having said that, we'd be quite free and sitting in the sun in Perth.
Yeah, you wish you'd stayed in Perth now.
I know, right? I know. And so I guess part of the decision making for us was about saying who do we want to be in life, and that question is a constant. It doesn't have a permanent answer. And so we check in with each other pretty regularly, actually, every few months over dinner or whatever, sitting on the couch late at night, just saying, hey, how are we doing? Do we need to make some changes here? Because, there's a bit of, whatever, we're feeling a certain way. And so to directly answer the question, how do you deal with life-changing things like that when there is a why or a fork in the road? For me, it comes down to what you feel is right. Even though one thing might look sexier or shinier or look more successful to your friends and your family, really what it comes down to is, how do you want to live your life? And what things do you want to not necessarily be known for, but what will make you more fulfilled as a human being? And sometimes that requires, sometimes that requires steps. So you might say, look, I know that this thing right now is probably not fulfilling for me, and it's maybe boring, or maybe, it seems like it's not worth it, but I need to do that in order to get to my thing that is worth it. Sometimes we need to do that in life, whether it's a degree or a traineeship, or, maybe it's a conversation even. Like, it might not even be a multi-year thing. It might just be, I need to get over this decision to make that happen. And it's not an easy one to make, but it's something. And sometimes that might be things like, recognizing that you're in a relationship that is not fulfilling, and the hardest thing to do might be to end that relationship, but it might be the thing that's necessary to move forward and to do something. Or it might be the complete opposite. You might be in a relationship and say, you know what, the thing I really need to do is make this more permanent, or whatever. It's about asking yourself, what is the most important thing for my heart and soul, because that's what you're going to live with. And you can make poor decisions, and that's easy to deal with. But when you make a decision on head alone, or image alone, or ego alone, those are the things that you look back in your life and say, why did I do that? Why didn't I just follow my heart? It's a unique thing for our generation too, I think, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I had a lot of thoughts come up and then get suppressed again during that. I was like, yeah. So I don't know which one to bounce off at the moment, but no, I think you answered all of them as my thoughts came up and down. So yeah. Because the idea, the fulfillment, you said fulfilled. The amount of times that word has passed through my life in the past, like,
since starting the podcast?
Well, not even that, just like recently, is insane. So, and I like the idea that you said, sometimes taking steps, it's not always about big decisions.
Yeah.
Because, because
there's also like, if what will fulfill you most is having a big family and a home and feeling safe and secure, then you might opt for the job that doesn't fulfill you as much, but pays you more, so that you can then have that more fulfilling family life and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think it's different for everybody, and it doesn't always mean taking the job or the thing that will make you most fulfilled. If there's something else that will lead to, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I'm too young to know this stuff.
You're exactly right, Em. That's exactly. And I asked the question, okay, what's going to be better for the world? If I was rich and able to just give stacks of money to the poor, or whether I was maybe not rich but had a decent sort of living wage, but I could help with the things that I was doing in my work. That's a constant question that I was asking myself 10, 15, 20 years ago. And one was much more shiny and much more impressive to look at, and the idea was incredible, and it really still is in so many ways. Many of my friends who are philanthropists give incredibly to the world.
Yeah, I was about to say that we need both of those people in the world.
We do.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the work that you choose is the fulfilling thing, and it makes you money. And so you can do all of those things. There's no it's not a separate thing all the time.
Yeah.
But it's about why. It's about why do you want to chase the money? Is it about fulfillment because society looks upon you with your big things and your shiny things and says that you are worthy because of that? Or is it about being generous? And I think the why is the most important question to ask in that place, because so often when we go to chase those shiny things, it's because we think that others will like us more, or that the society will see us as more important or more worthy or more loved. And that's just, in my experience, that's just not the case at all.
Yeah.
Sometimes, though, it's also about, I just want that thing because I want to be comfy.
Yeah. Look, don't get me wrong. I love things.
Yeah.
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 No, I think. Oh wait, we still haven't touched on your problem yet, Benno. Do you have a problem?
I
for
have
us?
one more question.
Okay, sorry, go on.
That we've it's gonna. I don't know what I'm saying. Okay, last question for you. You kind of touched on it before when you were talking about you and Lana and not being able to have kids. But what do you do when, like, the thing that you really want, when you can't have it? Basically, what do you do when you lose your purpose, or there's something that you can't achieve that you really want?
Yeah, I call this a train crash, not because it's horrific, but because I think that there's this train in life, and that our collective society has created. And that is, you're on this train, right? You're going through high school, you're on the train. You stop off and you go to school and then you come back on. And then the next stop is you find a life partner. And then the next stop is you maybe get married. And then the next stop is you buy a house, maybe, if you don't live in Sydney. And then the next stop is, a fulfilling career, and then children, and then retirement, and then you get a caravan, and then you die, right? That's the
caravan being the most important step in that process.
That's the height of that's the pinnacle.
That's the Australian dream. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is what is the train of life. And yet when one of those things doesn't occur, as you mentioned, it feels like a train crash, that it actually derails the rest of the track. And when you're in that moment, it actually feels like when we found out that day, I can still remember being in the car on the way home from the specialist, and we had like two stations right next to each other, it seems, on this train track, because we were driving on the way home from our specialist. This was in Perth, and we had been told that we can't have children and in that appointment. So we were absolutely devastated, and literally train crash moment for us. And we're in the car, and the phone rings, and I'm answering the phone, and we were in the process of buying a house in Melbourne because we're moving back here. And the agent on the phone said, if you just offer another $500, the deal's yours. And I can distinctly recall saying, I don't give a toss about your $500 right now. Just do it, right? Just do it. Yes, okay, $500. And he's like, congratulations. And we're like, thanks. Like, it was supposed to be this amazing moment. And yet it wasn't. And so for us, we went through a significant period of time where we asked ourselves those questions of life importance and sat with it, and maybe believed that, we were just, what was the point anymore? If the purpose of life was to continue humanity, right? If our job as human beings was to make another human being, and then that human being was then going to make another one, and then that's it. All of our job is just self-sustaining humanity, and we couldn't do that. What did that mean for us? And so we went about asking those questions about what was important then, what was our purpose in life. What if we weren't here to do that? Then if the end of our journey is a full stop instead of another sentence after us, then what was the rest of our sentence going to look like? Not like jail sentence, but what does our journey look like? And so we did some really hard work over those next few years to look at how were we going to make a difference in the world. we still had nieces and nephews and cousins and, other people in our community that we loved and cared for and that we could be an influence with. And so our jobs then turned to be the best uncle and auntie in the world, to be the best, pseudo uncle and auntie in the world, to looking at issues in our communities to say, how can we embrace the arts? How can we assist local makers in our communities? How can we, support people who were struggling with the same kind of questions as we were? And whilst we weren't this encyclopedia of knowledge and experience, we were going through something that we were able to potentially help others with. And so that's kind of what we did at the time. And so my encouragement for people is when that thing can't happen or doesn't happen, or maybe you don't even want it to happen, but society still wants you to do it. The question for me is what's the foundational thing in your life that's important? Because it's always worth it to try something. It's always worth it to be here and not to end it, because the world needs each of us, because we're all part of this incredible human kaleidoscope that we exist in. And to be around, to say to people, you know what, I really value you and love you and want you to come over to my house for a cup of tea once stage 4 lockdown has ended. That is important, because if our life is about experiences of joy and sorrow, and if our life is about fulfillment and about being together in community, then that's what matters. The train track doesn't matter as much. It helps us along the way, don't get me wrong, but to have one straight line like that is a really dangerous thought process, because it does exactly what you said. It is when something can't happen and it seems like everyone in the world around you is experiencing that thing, that checkbox, it makes us feel really unfulfilled when we can't do that thing. But I'm here to say that it can be an incredibly fulfilling life if your train doesn't stop at that station, even if it's intentional, because life's not about those things. That's been my experience anyway.
Yeah. One last quick question. If there's someone listening who is, their train has crashed and they're sitting in a space where they're just like, trying to ask all these questions themselves, but, not knowing how to answer it and feeling really like this period of hopelessness will never go away. I know you now have a daughter, but did you get to a point where you were comfortable with potentially never having kids? Did it end? Yeah. Yeah,
we did. In fact, for quite a few years, we kind of had decided, you know what, this is not going to happen for us. There was one other option, and we ended up taking that option for an egg donor. But for quite a few years, we said, you know what, we can find happiness here. And we did, absolutely. And it was only through, like I said before, when Lana and I check in pretty regularly with each other at a deep level. And we're always committed to doing that, because it's oftentimes the business of life, and, you just kind of ignore things and you just get on with life. And yet when you stop and say, how are you really about this thing? You'd be surprised what you learn, even when you live with someone. And so it was me who said, it was a Father's Day one time, and I was sitting by a beach, Lana was working, and I was just doing some journaling that day. And, as you do, and, I kind of reflected upon the thought process wasn't that I was unfulfilled, and it wasn't that I wasn't whole. In fact, I wrote a letter to Lana, and it basically said something like, I am whole. We are whole without children. But do you want to give it a go?
Yeah.
Because I kind of feel like that would add something to our life, and I think we would be good at it, and blah, 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 blah. And essentially, she called me and she said, because I sent it to her straight away, and she said, I've been waiting for this moment for you to realize, that this would be a good idea, and okay, let's go do it, right? And so we did though have quite a few years where we said, you know what, we are having a ball and we're enjoying life, and we had the most amazing relationship with our friends' kids and our cousins and our nieces and nephews and still do. And I think that really helped us articulate to ourselves why we were making that decision in the first place. Because
also, I imagine it would have been really like expensive process to know exactly what that's going to play in your life before you make that kind of a step would have definitely been beneficial.
Yeah, look, I encourage anyone thinking about having kids, regardless of whether it's through IVF or any other ways.
Kids are expensive to
Kids are just expensive. But like regardless of the cost, you know, the process of understanding why you want to have kids is, I don't think we do it well as a community, because it's, to some extent, and this is what we discovered, that children are an accessory. They're just a thing that, you know, that's not the truth, but that's what has become of them in many ways. Because if you don't have one, that's when you recognize it. You know, if you're 30, 35 years old and you know, you're a woman and you're a teacher, or you're working in a retail setting or something like that, during the day, during the week, the only people that you see are mothers. And when they will always ask you, so how old are your kids? And, you know, it's an assumption, because
that's crazy to me at my current point in life.
And so I would counsel anyone in a relationship or not who is looking to have kids, ask yourself why you want to have kids and come up with a reason, because it's a life choice. And especially when we're in quite an overpopulated world, you know, to the idea of having children isn't just about you anymore. It's about the community that you live in. And it's an intentional choice, because we can choose not to. And so, it is wonderful. Don't get me wrong. It's been an amazing time in my life.
Okay, maybe we should now move on to your problem.
So I was at the butcher this morning, and we're in lockdown, right? So every shop has a limit of number of people, and so the butcher has a limit of 3 people and it says in fairly large text on the front door, this big stop sign and this big thing saying max 3 people in store. So you can peek in because it's all glass on the front. Okay, well, there's 3 people in there. So I'm standing out the front waiting with my mask on because that's mandatory. And this person walks up, walks straight in, right, in front of me. The community might call her a boomer, and or a
Karen,
and or a Karen. And this is the question that I'll pose in a moment. But basically, you know, she walks in, she gets told, "Can you please wait outside?" She comes outside. Oh, didn't see the sign. And then I go in, get my things. She comes in while I'm in there and says, "Oh, I couldn't see the sign. Maybe you should move the sign." And she leaves because I was getting a few things. Then I was the only one left in the store. And I said to the butcher guy, I said, "Look, from my perspective, the sign's pretty clear. So, you know," and he's like, "She comes in here every week and complains about the sign being in the wrong spot." And so my question is, how do we break down, you know, because my immediate thing is bloody boomers, right? Mm-hmm. Just blaming someone else for them not paying attention or whatever the thing is. So is the question, because my mind went straight there to assaulting another generation in my mind. How do we break down that thing between generations in your, like, you know, I call we because I'm a millennial. I
was going to say, can we break this down? Because Emily and I have an argument about this.
This is a constant argument because Sam is a Gen Z like I am. He is literally the bordering
I know,
year.
and you know what? I appreciate you telling me I'm a part of that younger generation, but
Join me.
I continually prove to you that I'm very much also a millennial because
you're literally in the bordering year. So I feel like you could pick I would associate you more with Gen Z than with if Ben's a millennial. You're closer in age to me than you are to Ben.
I'm old millennial though, so I'm nearly Gen X, but I'm a millennial.
Yeah.
And also, can I just say, I think Gen X is largely forgotten about in all of these conversations.
They're loving lockdown because they can read books.
That's my mum. I had to interview my mum for a documentary for uni, and she's just like, "Yeah, I was born for this moment. I've been preparing for this my entire life."
Yeah.
So how do you you guys would get called millennials probably, right? Because you're hip people and you're older than 15.
I don't think I've ever been called well. Most people recognize that there's a new generation, whether they associate me with Gen Z or not, because I am towards the higher end, but they definitely don't. They look at me and look at a child because I look like I'm 12. So I've never been associated with millennials.
Can I say as well, where I noticed the generational kind of battlefront the most is actually on since being in lockdown or in quarantine, I have absolutely gotten a TikTok account.
Oh, yep. I haven't gone there yet.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's worthwhile, but
it's definitely a time waster, so don't do it.
I'm even not sure about Reels on Instagram being implemented.
Yeah, I mean, why not just be your own app, Instagram? Like,
exactly.
Stay in your lane.
Just stay in your lane.
No, but so on TikTok, it's very much this Zoomer versus millennial, like Gen Z versus millennial argument all the time, and the I feel like I'm constantly torn between both groups, because millennial, like the Gen Z absolutely started on that app, and it started as just like these dances and stuff, and it was their thing, and then the millennials came in and have started to take over and
ruin things. A bit like Facebook with the boomers.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And
I feel
So I guess the way to deal with that, it's such a hard question because I feel like as well the media hypes it up and kind of
because there is that whole Karen narrative. Like,
Karen from Brighton is a perfect example. You guys would have seen that, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
So we're
I hate when the media gives those arguments power.
I know, but Karen from Brighton, literally, we're in lockdown, lady, and you can only go within 5 Ks of your house, 1 hour a day exercise.
Wait, can you explain? I don't know what this is.
Okay, so that's the limit, right? So 1 hour a day of exercise within 5 kilometres of your house. And so Karen gets interviewed because she's walking around the Botanical Gardens in Melbourne. They're like, what does this mean for you? She's like, oh, it's ridiculous because I've already walked the streets of Brighton, right? And so
it sounds like a very entitled kind of.
She's like, I need to be walking on the tan because that's, but it's outside my 5 kilometre radius. But I've already walked, I've done all of Brighton, she says. And so
it's like completely disregarding the reason why these rules exist.
Yes, it's entitlement. Yeah.
I have no answer for this question because I am very judgmental about not judgmental, but I'm quick to make a snap decision and just not push any harder with why I think that way or what you see someone being also at work. Being in a customer service industry, I get Karen'd. I get that.
But I think maybe it's important to recognize as well, there are Karens in every generation.
Oh yeah, for sure. We just have
Chads. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We just have a different version and they come and they go. And I think
actually wouldn't say that I get abused by any one generation more than the other. Yeah. The elderly are rude as all hell, especially when I work at the theatre. They can be really entitled because they come to the theatre and the opera and blah, blah, blah. But then I also get young people who demand things quicker and all this stuff and stuff. I don't know that one generation is better or worse than the other, but yeah.
So maybe that's the answer.
Everyone sucks.
Maybe that's the answer. Maybe we just need to, as you said, Sam, maybe we just need to stop using those titles.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful in politics too. It's stop putting labels on stuff that doesn't need labels. Let's just talk about whether or not this is the right policy.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day,
don't worry about who's making it. Is this correct?
Yeah, those people, the people who are being entitled are just being entitled, and that is the issue in itself, is that they just don't have a great attitude, but it doesn't have to be bigger than it is, and it doesn't have to be I don't know.
I think the problem is labels are very helpful in every context in certain situations, but I think the problem arises when you can over label. Yeah.
Like when
I
you
think
put a
that's kind of
second
where
label on the jar of jam because it already says jam.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Not sure I understand, but sure.
Yeah.
Is that a millennial thing?
No, it's a boomer thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I don't know that we can solve that problem. I think
That's okay. It's one for another day. We can just say, you know what? I don't know the answer to this, but let
I'll
me
find
find
out for you.
Circle
Yeah.
back. I love that.
I also think this is one that needs like constant reflection.
Yeah.
So if any listener has any tips or advice or insight, feel free to DM us or comment or do any of the Instagram things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for
No, recommendations.
I do
We
this
forgot to warn you about this, Ben, but I'm sure in lockdown you
fly
have
with it.
recommendations.
every single week. I try to wrap it up.
We've cut goals.
And we's like, hey.
But we're doing recommendations. Somebody said to me, I think maybe it was Will. I was like, I think we're going to cut goals, but we'll keep recommendations. He's like, yeah, that's good because it makes you more human. Like it makes me realize that you're actually a person and you do things and you enjoy things and I can like get insight into what you like. Does that make sense? So it's important. We're keeping it. Sorry.
Fine.
Okay. I don't have a recommendation.
Me either. I feel like every single time we get to this segment, I panic order the pancakes. That's something I do in every cafe all the time. I never know what to get, and I always panic order.
You fully did that last time we got breakfast. You panic ordered, and then you regretted it so bad.
You got
I didn't
plan.
panic order. I was very clear in my decision.
You didn't read it.
It doesn't matter. I got disgusting waffles. It was so bad.
Oh, you never get the waffles.
Yeah, well, I learnt that the hard way, didn't I? That's my recommendation for you this week. Don't get the waffles.
No, you got to do better. That was a couple weeks ago. Come on.
Fine. I feel like I've already maybe I'll have to be checked on this. Have I already recommended the book by Andrew Yang?
No, but you've recommended the Rutger Bregman. Yeah.
I feel like I'm really shoving UBI down people's throats. They're both huge advocates for that program. And it's not just about that, but what I like about, I'm going to recommend The War on Normal People by Andrew Yang. That book gave me a lot of insight and it really helped me, I guess. That book gave me a lot of perspective in how to listen to other people. Because the first whole half of the book is like, what is a normal person? It's very much about the American context and it's like, what's a normal person in America? And it talks a lot about the median statistics. So it's like, I think the median is good because an average, like for example, if you talk about salary in America, the average salary is blown way out of proportion by one guy. You know, Jeff Bezos has $1 trillion or something. So like the median income is like 50% of the population are living below this salary.
Yeah.
And it's like learning those numbers. I was like, wow, so learning what the actual normal person is. Like the normal person is not college educated because only 30% of people have a college degree. And so 66% of people don't care about free education.
Yeah.
So things like that was like a little eye-opening for me. And so like that book changed my perspective in a lot of, didn't necessarily change my perspective, but allowed me to see the other side, I think. And I would recommend that book to anyone. So The War on Normal People, Andrew Yang.
Okay, nice. Ben, do you have a recommendation?
For a book or?
Whatever you want. I recommended a lip balm one time, so literally whatever you want. Do you want more time to think?
Yes. Do you have a recommendation, Em?
I mean, I do. I mean, it's not so much a recommendation as something that was recommended to me and it has changed my life in a very superficial way, but I'm not sure it applies to everybody. But anyways, I got a Chromecast I have a TV in my bedroom, but I've moved house. So now my TV sits on like a bookshelf, but it's too far away from my bed to connect my computer. I used to just plug my computer in and watch Netflix or whatever from my computer, but now it's too far away from my bed. I'd have to get up to do that, and that was too much. So I bought a Chromecast.
Classic
It was recommended to me. Yeah. It was only like $55 and it came in like 2 days from Officeworks, which is my like one true love. And yeah, I can now literally watch whatever I want from my phone. I just like cast it up to my TV and it's been great. So if you are walking too far to watch TV, I recommend it.
A Chromecast.
Yeah. Also, it's like 7 times cheaper than Apple TV, but does all the things. So like
I don't understand. I'm not Pavo. I got an Apple TV. Sorry.
I have an Apple TV in my like main area. First of all, rude. Second of all, I have an Apple TV, but it's in like the TV area. And honestly, I don't know that I would spend money on an Apple TV again.
I'm also very much kidding. I literally was like having a mental breakdown last night about why I'm poor. And then
True, I got those exact messages.
yeah.
Hashtag Apple TV.
I was doing my taxes. I hate the tax
He
man.
goes to the Apple store to get his computer fixed, and then he comes home and he's like, I bought AirPods and I bought this and I bought this, but I have not got a new computer. I won't get a new computer. It's too expensive. But I did get AirPods and something else, a new snowboard and something else all in the same day.
Maybe the recommendation should be The Barefoot Investor.
I bought that. That's another book that I have to read that I haven't yet.
No, my recommendation is if you want to book one, because that's where we're rolling. My favourite book, and the one that I go back to all the time, is The Prophet by Kahlil Gibran.
Is that little one?
It's a little one. Yeah. It's
Gran bought it for me for my ordination.
I thought for sure we're about to get some smack then about like not reading the book you gave. I would really recommend this book.
No, I'm being compassionate. I was thinking about doing that. But this is the little gold. Like it's from the 70s or something, but it's just got little nuggets that you can go back to all the time and just be really either inspired or confused or confirmed or just whatever about. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah. Gran, I have that book. I haven't read it. Classic. But Gran gave it to me and she was like, when you're learning how to write like sermons and stuff, just like take inspiration from this and write everything about this.
It's a good one.
That's what I always do. But like, thank you.
But really my real recommendation is once we get out of stage 4, you got to come to the Mornington Peninsula.
I've been to the Mornington Peninsula.
Yep. This is very on brand for you to recommend.
I liked it. I have to admit, it was very nice.
Paradise.
We went to the hot springs.
Yep.
Morno.
Yeah. Met Pippa. She wasn't a fan of me, but that's fine.
Yeah, no, she was.
She was.
Once she left, she really reflected.
She warmed to you. Although,
that's fine.
Lana just sent me a text. She said, Pippa knows how to turn the speaker up now with the like grinning teeth face.
Nice. I also feel like it's a testament to you and your leadership style in that you are literally the leader of the Australian church, and yet, like, I don't know, we can just message you whenever we want and be like, hey, like, how's it going? That's cute, Pippa, like, picture of Pippa. Like, we're actually friends, and I think there's not a lot of churches where you would know well the leader, and I think that says a lot about you, that we actually know you be around, you've come to camps, like, yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's, for me, leadership is about not being the one in front, it's about everybody. I try my best to make sure that everyone's part of the same team. And with teams, whilst you have leaders, they're all just as accountable as each other. And so, my hope is that we can continue this, relationship and to, you guys are just as much leaders as I am. And, I don't have a podcast for one. So
you definitely should.
Yeah.
No,
if you had the time in your life, but I feel like you're way too busy for that.
Nah, you guys are doing a good job.
I feel like we could still talk. Like I still have so many things in my head that I want to talk about.
You'll have to come back on. I feel like we'll have to do a recycle. Yeah.
There's a few guests we've said this to. We just have to do it again
because everyone has so much to offer.
Ah, what a burden.
God, we know so many brilliant people.
You know what? I listened to Michelle Obama's podcast the other day.
I want to do that.
We didn't have Michelle on our podcast. What are you talking about?
But imagine having first episode Barack Obama. Like, give me a break. But if you want, there's another recommendation. If you want a great podcast on leadership and on what matters most in life and about parenting, like that one there, the one with Barack is really good.
Okay. I back that. I haven't even listened to it, but I back it because of who they are as people.
Yeah, 100%.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
It has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed this.
Me too.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing it.
Anytime.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave us a really nice review, follow us on Instagram at SamandEmHaveProblems, screenshot when you listen to us and post it on Instagram and tag us. Also, you can support us on Patreon if you so desire.
Absolutely. Send us a DM about anything in general, any problems you want us to solve. And music is by The Vinyl Press, and you can find them at The Vinyl Press on Instagram as well.
Yay, thank you so much.